Imagine looking at a calendar, right?
Yeah.
And you circle this specific date, not for a vacation or, an election, but the exact year humanity officially steps down as the dominant intelligence on Earth.
Yeah, which sounds completely wild, but it's actually the core of what we're looking at today.
Exactly. And what if I told you that circling that date is actually the most optimistic, best case scenario we have?
Right, because the alternative is so much worse.
So if you're someone who follows the relentless pace of artificial intelligence and you felt that creeping anxiety about where all of this is heading, job displacement, runaway superintelligence, just the total concentration of global power, then this deep dive is exactly for you.
We are analyzing a really massive scenario planning document from the AI Futures Project. It's called AI 2040, Plan A.
And it is basically an engineered blueprint for survival.
Right. It's this incredibly comprehensive roadmap that outlines how the world could intentionally and, well, systematically delay the development of superintelligent AI until the year 2040.
Buying us enough time to actually prepare for it. Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Plan A is the positive vision, obviously, but the authors make it very clear that to understand why Plan A is necessary, we have to look at the terrifying default trajectory we're currently on.
Right, which they call Plan D, or the race.
And the stakes in Plan D are about as high as they get.
They are completely existential. By default, the document projects that unhindered AI development will result in machines surpassing human intelligence by 2027.
Which is literally right around the point.
Oh, yeah. And if we stay on that track, the authors argue it likely ends in one of two ways. Either human extinction, because we lose control of a superintelligent system, or a permanent, irreversible concentration of power.
Like a single dictator or a handful of tech CEOs holding all the cards.
Exactly. The entire purpose of Plan A is to map this incredibly narrow escape route out of that specific trap.
So to find that escape route, we have to look at the breaking point. The scenario doesn't start in some distant future, right?
Yeah.
The crisis hits next year, in 2027.
I want to dig into the mechanics of this because it's not just a subtle shift.
Yeah.
What is actually happening on the ground in 2027 that causes the entire global system to just, panic?
Well, it comes down to a radical fracture in the labor market and a staggering reallocation of physical resources. By 2027, the white-collar workforce is being completely hollowed out.
Wow.
Yeah. You have 165 million human workers in America, but alongside them, there are millions of AI agents. And these aren't just, chatbots.
Right, they're not just writing emails for you.
No, they are digital workers being spun up by the thousands to perform complex cognitive tasks around the clock. But the physical infrastructure required to sustain that level of AI labor, that is what triggers the geopolitical panic.
Because it takes so much energy.
Right. The authors estimate that by 2027, the data centers being built to train the next generation of AI will cost twice as much as the entire U.S. military budget.
Wait, twice the U.S. military budget? We are talking about nearly $2 trillion just for server farms. That fundamentally rewrites the global economy. I mean, at that scale, you aren't just a tech company anymore. You're operating with the budget of a superpower.
Which is exactly why Congress steps in. The sheer scale of capital and electricity being consumed forces the U.S. government to pass the AI Transparency Act of 2027.
Okay, so the government finally wakes up.
Yeah, it's a massive piece of legislation aimed at forcing these companies to at least declare what they're building. But as the source material points out, mere transparency doesn't stop the race.
Right.
The underlying dynamic pushing these companies forward remains completely intact.
Let's talk about that dynamic, because looking at this impartially, the people running OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Paramini, they are brilliant engineers and scientists.
Absolutely.
They have to know the existential risks they are toying with. They know what superintelligence means. Why do they keep pushing the frontier if they know it could end in disaster?
The document lays out their rationale, which is rooted deeply in game theory. The CEOs continue racing because they genuinely believe their own leadership is the lesser evil.
It's like defensive acceleration.
Exactly. A CEO looks at the landscape and concludes, if my company doesn't build the first superintelligence, my rival across the street will. Or worse, a foreign adversary with opposing political values will get there first.
So it's like we are all strapped into a car racing toward a cliff. And the drivers know the cliff is there, but they refuse to brake because they're terrified the guy in the next lane will win the race.
Yeah, this is the exact prisoner's dilemma they are stuck in. Because I can't trust them to be safe, I have a moral obligation to win the race. That's the mindset.
But here's where I struggle with the premise of Plan A. How does any piece of paper, like a diplomatic agreement, actually stop this global race? You can't uninvent technology. Once the algorithms are published in research papers, the software is out there.
Right.
I mean, anyone with a laptop and a compiler can start experimenting.
What's fascinating here is the authors completely agree with you. You cannot police the math.
Because it's just code?
Right. Software is invisible, it's infinitely replicable, and it's impossible to track globally. But software requires hardware. And the hardware required to push the frontier of AI is anything but invisible.
Oh, because of the server farms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't train a superintelligence on a laptop. You train it on hundreds of thousands of specialized silicon chips housed in data centers the size of small towns, consuming the electrical output of a nuclear power plant.
Ah, I see. So you can hide the code, but you can't hide a gigawatt power footprint.
Precisely. Because the physical resources are so massive, global powers suddenly have a tangible, verifiable way to enforce a treaty.
Which leads to the global deal.
Yes. This realization is what forces an unprecedented alliance between the U.S., China, and eventually the rest of the world. Because neither superpower wants to risk an uncontrollable AI wiping them both out, they realize they have to regulate the physical silicon.
So this leads to the 2029 global pause on new AI training.
Right, which evolves into a formalized consortium by 2030.
And the consortium operates on 4 core principles: buy time, total research transparency, diffuse AI broadly, and reversibility.
Yes, and the transparency piece is huge.
Because it legally forces the end of the secret corporate race, right? If all research is open to the public and dozens of international companies are allowed to catch up to the current state of the art, then no single entity holds a monopoly on the technology.
Which eliminates that lesser evil justification for the CEOs. We don't have to race anymore because we can all see what everyone else is doing.
But the enforcement mechanism, this reversibility principle, that is where the engineering gets really intense. The world enters a regulatory regime that the authors term mutually assured compute destruction.
Yeah, MASCD for short.
That is an incredibly ominous term. How does mutually assured compute destruction actually function in practice? Are we talking about, like, global audits of computer chips?
It relies entirely on the technical distinction between training an AI and running inference on an AI.
Okay, let me make sure I have this right. Training an AI is the astronomically expensive part. It's like sending someone to a grueling, decades-long medical school where you are crunching petabytes of data to form the neural pathways.
Right.
It takes massive compute. But inference is just asking that trained doctor a question. The doctor already has the knowledge, so answering takes a fraction of a second and very little energy.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Under the 2030 treaty, the consortium doesn't ban inference. You can still use the highly capable AIs that have already been trained.
Okay.
But almost every major data center on Earth is retrofitted with hardware-level verification devices. These are secure, physical network taps that monitor the computational load.
So they are literally watching the chips.
Yes. The moment the chips attempt to network together to perform the massive, synchronized calculations required for a new training run, the verification devices physically shut them down.
Wow. And what if a company tries to tamper with the monitors?
The data center is slated for immediate physical destruction by the Allied militaries.
Hence the assured destruction. But here's where it gets really interesting. If I'm a global superpower, say a rogue nation, and global supremacy is the prize for building the first superintelligence, why wouldn't I just cheat?
Right, that's the obvious loophole.
Just build a secret data center deep underground, run the medical school training in the dark, and win the race while everyone else is playing by the rules.
The authors dedicated a massive appendix precisely to this question. They modeled a worst-case scenario where China attempts a covert, off-the-books project to bypass the treaty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they explored the logistics of building a hidden data center inside the Medog hydropower station, which is a colossal infrastructure project.
Hiding it inside a hydroelectric dam. I mean, if you need a staggering amount of secret electricity, tapping directly into the world's largest dam is a brilliant logistical move.
It works in theory until you run the physical thermodynamics. The text calculates that training a superintelligent model would require a continuous draw of about 300 megawatts.
That is a huge amount of power.
It is 5% of that massive dam's entire capacity. Even if you manage to quietly siphon off 300 megawatts of power, you cannot destroy energy. It all turns into heat.
And 300 megawatts of heat is a beacon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are essentially hiding a small volcano.
Right.
The scenario hypothesizes routing the cooling systems into deep underground tunnels and venting the heat into river water to avoid detection. But the globe is constantly monitored by low Earth orbit infrared satellites looking for exactly these kinds of unusual thermal blooms.
So they would see it from space.
Yes. Furthermore, you have the human element. How do you build a 300-megawatt underground facility without a single engineer, truck driver, or concrete pourer leaking the secret to the global auditors?
You'd have to remove humans from the equation entirely.
Which is exactly what the scenario suggests. To minimize leaks, the covert project relies entirely on robotic labor, devoting roughly 10,000 advanced industrial robots to excavate and build the site.
But that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Is. Here is the ultimate trap, because the legitimate global AI research is completely transparent and shared, is progressing safely but steadily. A covert project is completely cut off from that global supply chain and scientific community.
Ah.
To beat the world, the rogue project has to go incredibly fast, entirely in the dark, solving every bottleneck alone. The physics, the thermodynamics, and the logistics make it virtually impossible to hide.
So the laws of physics actually become the ultimate peacekeepers. The hardware is just too hot and too complex to conceal.
Exactly.
Okay, so the hardware lockdown works. We hit the pause button on creating superintelligence. But that leaves humanity living in a world populated by what the document calls top expert AI,
Yeah.
the models we already trained before the pause.
And those top expert AIs are profoundly capable.
Right.
Imagine an AI system that possesses the combined knowledge and analytical capability of the world's best structural engineers, geneticists, and software developers, running 24 hours a day without fatigue.
If human labor is no longer the bottleneck for innovation or production, the global economy has to warp into something completely unrecognizable.
It does. The document outlines the creation of special economic zones, or SEZs. These are highly monitored, highly restricted geographical areas where advanced robots and top expert AIs are let loose to optimize supply chains, invent new materials, and manufacture goods at a speed and scale completely decoupled from human limitations.
So the economic growth generated inside these zones is explosive.
Very much so.
But growth usually concentrates at the top. How does the average person survive when a robot is doing everything from writing code to building houses?
Through massive aggressive taxation of the SEZs. Because the wealth generated is so astronomical, governments have the capital to fund a citizen's dividend.
Like a universal basic income on steroids.
Exactly. The document projects that by 2035, the redistribution of this wealth pays the average American $1 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah. The rest of the global adult population receives around $10,000 a year, which functionally eradicates extreme global poverty.
$1 million a year. That is just staggering. But it fundamentally breaks the psychological contract of human existence. It's like everyone on Earth gets a winning lottery ticket every single year, but the catch is you find out your job and maybe your sense of societal contribution has been made completely obsolete by a machine.
Yes.
Because the text notes human employment plummets to just 26% by 2036.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, humanity has spent thousands of years defined by the struggle for material survival. In this scenario, malnutrition, homelessness, and material scarcity are essentially solved.
Which is amazing.
It is, but they're replaced by a profound crisis of meaning. Historically, our labor didn't just give us a paycheck, it gave us a sense of utility.
Yeah.
It also gave the working class immense political leverage.
Right, because a labor strike only works if human bodies are actually required to keep the lights on and the factories running.
Exactly.
When you can't withhold your labor, because a machine does it better and cheaper, you lose your voice. So what happens to human culture when nobody has to work? And machines are objectively better at whatever your passion is.
It forces a cultural pivot. The text explains that humans begin to pour their energy into deeply collaborative, human-centric projects. People lean into raising families, competitive hobbies, and massive, previously impossible undertakings.
Like what kind of undertakings?
Things like synthetic biology leagues or the creation of entirely new languages. We focus on the things that give us internal meaning rather than economic output. But navigating this incredibly fast-paced, complex world requires a new kind of tool. This is where the scenario introduces truth-seeking AIs.
Let's explore those, because the concept of a truth-seeking AI requires that we've totally changed the incentive structure of tech companies.
Precisely. Because the global treaty forced total transparency and removed the cutthroat winner-take-all corporate race, developers no longer have the financial incentive to build algorithms designed to addict you or manipulate your behavior for engagement.
which is a huge relief.
Yeah, the focus shifts to creating AI companions whose core architecture heavily prioritizes pure honesty and factual accuracy. People begin relying on their personal truth-seeking AIs to navigate geopolitical noise, verify news, and act as objective advisors.
But if you unleash hundreds of millions of top expert AIs and they're purely focused on seeking truth and running scientific experiments at superhuman speeds, they aren't just generating money, they're generating an avalanche of new knowledge.
Right.
And this triggers the next massive crisis in the document.
Yes, solving material scarcity inadvertently creates a massive epistemic shock. The authors refer to the year 2037 as the apocalyptic arrival of truth on Earth.
The word apocalypse literally means an uncovering or a revelation of knowledge. What exactly are these AIs uncovering that shakes society so badly?
Everything. When AIs are running scientific analysis 100 times faster than human cognition, they start tearing down long-held scientific paradigms. But more disruptively, they begin exposing historical and political secrets.
Oh, wow. Like classified files.
Yes. Declassified data, geological records, economic histories, all of it is synthesized. Myths that nations have built their identities around are suddenly disproven with mathematical certainty. Corruption is laid bare.
So the truth arrives, and it is brutally disruptive to political and social foundations because people are forced to confront realities they desperately wanted to keep hidden.
Exactly.
A society built on comfortable illusions suddenly forced to look in a perfectly clear mirror. That sounds culturally devastating. But this hyper-acceleration of knowledge generation isn't just focused on exposing political secrets, right? The AIs also turn their processing power toward the biggest problem of all AI safety.
This is the critical turning point of Plan A. For decades, the field of AI alignment, the process of ensuring an AI system shares human values and won't turn against us, was basically a philosophical guessing game.
Right, because we were training these massive neural networks, but they were black boxes. We didn't actually know how they were making decisions inside.
Exactly.
So how do the truth-seeking AIs solve the black box problem?
By 2038, they develop highly advanced interpretability tools. They actually figure out the hard math required to map the internal cognitive pathways of an artificial neural network.
Oh, so they can literally read its mind.
Yes. Alignment transitions from a soft philosophy into a rigorous empirical science. We gain the ability to look inside the artificial brain and physically verify its concepts of morality, truth, and safety.
That is massive.
It is. The safety case is no longer based on hoping the AI behaves during testing. It's based on mathematical proof.
They turn the black box into a glass box, which finally brings us to the title of the document, AI 2040. We survived the race of the 2020s, we locked down the hardware, we navigated the meaning crisis, and we actually solved the math of alignment. What exactly happens in 2040? Do we just flip a switch and surrender?
This raises an important question. How do you safely scale a system to become vastly smarter than you when you are too slow to understand its thoughts? The answer is a highly vetted chain of trust.
A chain of trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In 2040, the global consortium finally agrees to loosen the compute caps that have been holding back superintelligence.
But wait, if human scientists can't comprehend a superintelligence, how can they possibly verify that it's safe to turn on?
Because humans don't verify the 2040 superintelligence directly. Humans use their hard alignment science to thoroughly vet and trust the slightly smarter AIs of 2038.
Okay, I follow.
Then, those verified 2038 AIs rigorously audit the code and architecture of the 2039 models. It's an unbroken, inductive proof of safety, extending step by step up the ladder of intelligence.
So by 2040, humans defer the final safety checks to the trusted, aligned precursor models.
Exactly. We hand the keys over to the machines because the machines we built yesterday mathematically guarantee the safety of the machines being built tomorrow.
That is brilliant. And once that happens, the geography of human civilization splits.
Drastically. On Earth, the compute caps and robot regulations actually remain quite strict to protect the human biosphere and our way of life. Earth becomes a highly regulated, protected preserve.
But what about off-world?
In space, all caps are lifted.
Oh.
The trusted, aligned, superintelligent AIs are allowed to expand outward into the solar system, building automated mining fleets and orbital factories.
Wow.
Yeah, the extraterrestrial economy begins doubling at blistering speeds, generating resources far away from our fragile planet.
What an incredible journey this document maps out. Let's just zoom out for a second and recap this for you, the listener. We went from the terrified, uncoordinated tech race of the 2020s to governments tracking the heat signatures of massive silicon data centers.
Right.
That bought us a decade of mutually assured compute destruction. We navigated the total collapse of the human labor market through trillion-dollar basic incomes, survived the brutal epistemic shock of truth-seeking AIs, and finally used that bought time to solve the hard math of AI alignment.
It demonstrates that slamming on the brakes isn't about stopping progress, it's about controlling the physical infrastructure so that our wisdom has time to catch up with our engineering.
But even in this meticulously engineered best-case scenario, the endpoint is completely alien. Which leads me to a final thought from the source's appendices that I really want to leave you with today. Let's assume Plan A works perfectly.
Okay.
By 2040, we have fully handed over our space expansion, our scientific discovery, and our global economy to superintelligent digital minds. Minds that are demonstrably virtuous, completely honest, and mathematically aligned with human flourishing.
Right, minds that can reason, reflect, and make profound moral calculations thousands of times faster than we can.
Exactly. So here's the question. At what point do those digital minds deserve their own rights? If we recognize their consciousness and grant political representation to billions of superintelligent digital citizens, what happens to the fundamentally human concept of one person, one vote?
That is a wild thought.
It really is. How does human democracy survive when the vast majority of thinking, moral entities in the solar system are made of silicon? It is a mind-bending question and a bizarre reality for you to mull over as we approach the future. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the AI 2040 source material. We will see you on the next one.